This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Agun Erev Shabbos Rabbi Say, Agun Erev Chodesh Parshas Re'eh. So, Parshas Re'eh begins with the repercussions if we follow the right path, or if Chas v'Shalom we do not. And the pasuk says, Re'eh Anoichi Noisein Lefneichem Hayoim Bracha Uklal Asi. I place before you today blessing and curse. Es habracha, the blessing, Asher Tishma'u, that you will listen, Al Mitzvahs Hashem Alekeichem, to the mitzvahs of Hashem, Asher Anoichi Mitzaveh Eschem Hayom, that I command you today. V'haklala, and the curse, Im Lo Yisishma'u, Al Mitzvahs Hashem Alekeichem, if you don't listen, V'sartem in Adarach, Asher Anoichi Mitzaveh Eschem Hayom, V'aleches Acharei Elohim Achirim, Asher Lo Yedatem. One thing we notice immediately is that the terminology, phraseology that it says by the blessing is very different than it says by the curse. By the blessing it says that you will listen and you'll get the blessing. The blessing that you will listen. When it comes to the curse, it's more of a spelled out stipulation. Im loy sishma'u. If you don't listen. It doesn't say that by the blessing. Im tishma'u. It doesn't say es habracha im tishmu. It says asher tishmu. You listen. You will listen. And by the curse it says if you will not listen. So this is a diuk that many Mefarshim discuss. And today we're going to speak out from the drashos of the Bina La'itim. The Bina La'itim was written by Rav Azaria Figo. Azaria Figo happens to be one of the Italian Gedolim, and it happens to be coincidental that we're learning the Bina La'itim. There's not something I saw on the trip, something I happened to come across. Bina La'itim was written by Rav Azaria Figo. He wrote the Gidulei Truma on Choshen Mishpat. Choshen Mishpat, by the way, is primarily based on a sefer called Sefer HaTrumos, who is a Talmud, I believe, of the Ramban. And on the Sefer HaTrumos you have Gidulei Truma. The Shach paid a lot of money to get his hands on the Gidulei Truma. His name was Rav Azaria Figo. We mentioned in our Shiur that he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda of Modena. He was the Rebbe of Rav Moshe Zakuto. He started off his career in Venice, and then he realized that he was wasting time learning secular knowledge, and he went to the city of Pisa, and he dedicated himself entirely to Torah. And his Sefer Bina La'itim is one of the fathers of Sifrei Drush. Bina La'itim. Okay. He asked an amazing question. This is a question that you got to be kicking yourself if you never asked. Many people say Tehillim every day and are familiar with the Psukim in Tehillim. So I refer you to Perek Aleph of Tehillim. Ashrei Hoyesh, fortunate is the man Ashaloi Halach Ba'atzas V'Shayim, who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, Uveder Chatam Lo Yomad, does not stand in the way of the sinners, Uvumay Shavleitzim Lo Yashav, does not sit in the counsel of the scoffers. Kiyim B'Saras Hashem Cheftzai. His desire is only the Torah of God. Uvesayrasa Yageh Yomam V'Layla. And he is involved in delving into Torah day and night. And what will his reward be? V'haya ke'etz shasul al pagemayim. God will reward him. He will be like a tree planted by a pool of water, asher perio yitain v'itai, whose fruits are given at the right time. V'alei lo yibal, his leaves do not wear out. V'chal asher yaseh yatzliach. In other words, Hashem is promising the reward of those who study Torah and do not waste their time in frivolities. They will be rewarded with hatzlacha. Loichein harashayim, but not the wicked. The wicked, kiyim kamoitz asher titen aruach, they'll be like the chaff that the wind scatters. Okay. Frekt Rabbi Azaria Figo and the Bina La'itim the obvious question. Loichein harashayim, the wicked will not be successful. Pshita my kamash malan. You need the Tehillim to say the tzaddikim, they will be rewarded for their tzidkos with great hatzlacha, but not the wicked. What would you think? That Hashem would reward the wicked with great hatzlacha? I mean, I need David HaMelech to tell me that the Rebbe Hashem will not reward the wicked. Why would I think that he would reward the wicked? Here, it's telling you the great hatzlacha that the tzaddikim will have. Those who are b'sayrasa yege yoyman v'layla loichein harashayim. Why would anyone have any havamina that Rishayim would also get that reward? Okay, this is a very important question of why exactly the pasuk needs to spell out loichein harashayim. And basically, the principle, the fundamental yesod that we're going to discuss today is brought out from the following two psukim in the Asaras Hadibros, where the Rebbe Shalom says, don't worship idols. I am Hashem your God. I'm a jealous God. I visit punishment. Avos, al banim, al shileshim, v'al ribeyim l'soinai. Those who worship idols, Hashem says, I will visit punishment on them. How many generations? 4. V'al ribeyim. V'yoysa chesed, but I do kindness for how long? La'alofim. 2,000 generations. So do the math. What do we see from here? That God's attribute of reward is much, much greater than His attribute of punishment. How many times greater? 500 times. Says Rashi, Noitzer chesed, God preserves kindness. Sha'adamoisa, l'shalim schar, ad li'alpayim dar. For how long? 2,000 generations. Nimtseis, mida, toiva, yisera, almidas, peronios, achas al chamesh meyos. That the midah toiva is 500 times greater than punishment. Shazuli arba doiros, vizula alpayim. This is for 4, and this is for 2,000.
It's more than 500 times.
Why?
Because 1,000 generations is a lot more than 500 times the number of people who will be in 4 generations. Because they increase exponentially. So it's a lot better than 500 times.
So you're saying it's not...
More people. More people will benefit in 1,000 generations.
More people with the same number of generations.
I hear.
Unfortunately.
It's proportionally 500 times.
More, yeah.
But 500 is not really... Yeah, I hear. That's a good point. And the Bina Ilu Itim in Drush Samach, the Drush Ace Kates, he points out that this is a very well-established, well-known principle. Hanacha mu'umeses upshuta ma'idi. It is a very true and obvious principle. Heyos midas tuva yisbarach. That God's attribute of goodness, meruba ma'oid mimidas paranos, is much greater than punishment. Kasher hoichichu, like Chazal prove, poikir avos, avoin avos albanim, v'albnei banim al shlosh v'aribeim. Now, it's even more than that. Because this is talking about punishment for the worst Avera, Avodah Zarah. And for the worst Avera, it's 4 generations. And for any mitzvah, it's 2,000 generations. So, and when it comes to reward, it's for 2,000 generations. Says Rabbi Azaria Figo, this is an idea that's also borne out by the Psukim in Yeshaya. Look at number 7. The Rebbe Shalom says, "Berega katoin azavtich." For a brief moment, I will forsake you. Uverachamim gedolim akabtzech. But with great mercy, I will gather you in. Now he points out, what do you mean a brief moment? Rega katoin. A moment is always katoin. If it's gadol, it's not a rega. It's more than a rega. So what do you mean, berega katan? A rega is always katan, by very definition. There's no such thing as a short second and a long second.
A nanosecond.
Well, what do you mean a short second? So he says this is not only quantitatively, but also qualitatively. And that is like this. B'shetzef ketzef, in fierce anger, histarti fanai, I hid my face, rega, for a moment, mimech. But over Chesed Olam, with eternal kindness, Richamtich, I have Rachmanas on you. Amar Goyalech Hashem, your Redeemer, God says. In other words, Hashem's system of reward and punishment is not an equal system. The system of punishment is on a much lower scale than the system of reward, both quantitatively and qualitatively. How's that? And that is, the system of reward is eternal. Is Olam Haba. The system of punishment is finite, is not only quantitatively shorter, but also qualitatively.
Yeah,
and
is qualitatively...
Gehenna is usually for a finite amount of time. It's not forever. Ki lo yidach mimeno nidach. In general, Gehenna is a finite amount of time.
And what
So
happens to you afterwards?
after Gehenna,
Yeah.
if you have mitzvahs, you hope
Yeah,
many people go to Gan Eden. There is a concept that there's certain Paishe Magufan. You can have people who are serious sinners who they may not be able to get out. But ultimately, there's a concept that the Rebbeinu Shalom always finds a way to grant a person some type of eternal reward. But what we see from this pasuk is that the schar and the reward and the midas ha-chesed and the midas ha-tuv of the Rebbeinu Shalom is qualitatively and quantitatively much greater than the midas hadin. When it comes to punishment, it's only rega katayin. When it comes to punishment, it's only rega. However, when it comes to reward, it's rachamim gedolim. When it comes to chesed, it's chesed oilam. So this is the klal, this is the principle. Mida toiva meruba. The midah of reward is much, much greater. And therefore, the question we need to ask ourselves is as follows. Before we come to explaining the psukim and coming to see the answers, let's ask ourselves, is that really true? Mida taiva meruba midas paranos? And yet, if you look in the psukim of the Chumash, what does the Chumash speak about at greater length? Reward or punishment? Punishment is much longer. Where do we find reward in the Torah? Very little. Very little is mentioned about reward. Yeah, l'man yarichon yomecha v'zehu l'man yitav lach v'chai bohem. Yeah, but when it comes to punishment, you have Parshas b'chukaisai. You have what? You have 49 klalos of b'chukaisai. You have 98 klalos in kisavai, in hazinu. The Torah seems to speak about the punishments at great, great length. How does that fit into the concept of mida toiva meruba mimidas paranias? That doesn't.
We need more warning than we need.
That doesn't seem to fit the bill. Well, the Binol Itim offers one reason. He actually offers three reasons. We're going to bring down one here on the sheet I'll just mention to you. He says when you need to warn somebody of an impending punishment, in order to sort of make an impression on a person, sometimes it needs to be exaggerated. And he says those are the oinshim of the Torah. The Rebbeinu Shalom is not really going to unleash his wrath out of proportion, but the methodology of punishment is so that in order for a person to avoid incurring the punishment, the impending punishment is exaggerated. But then he offers a very interesting idea. And that is, if somebody gets you angry, and all of a sudden you say, "Ah!" You scream out, and you lash out, and you scream at the person.
Feel better.
The person is very lucky. Because you've just expended all of your anger in that moment of lashing out, and you're not going to do anything to the person. But if you keep it pent up and bottled up inside, then you never know, you could get so set off, the person's in very big trouble. The best thing to do sometimes, it's always better to control your anger. But sometimes if you let it vent, it's expended.
Can explode.
Lahavdil elaf alfei avdalos, the toichacha of Parshas B'chukaisai and Parshas Kisavai, the Rebbeinu Shalom is, so to speak, venting his anger b'dibur instead of doing it by Maisa. It's rachamim, it's chesed. In other words, Rebbeinu Shalom is saying, you know what? I will use up my kas for the averos that you've done. In the words of the Torah, in this way, after that, you're off the hook.
We didn't go to the Torah.
Look at number 9. Look at number 9. Ach yirtza ki leish hatzadik, to a righteous man, hiflig b'sipor ribei minei ha'osha yilai. It talks about how much tova they're going to get. So one second, we'll come to that in a minute.
What do you mean Torah?
Take a look. Let's skip to number 12. Look at number 12. Here's the question. Mim kol zeh ha'pios. With all of this consolation, ein lehisalem milachkar. How can we ignore from investigating? Ikra de milsa, the main topic. Bebrachos uklalos asher ra'inu mishitchiyusan. it looks superficially lo nishmar behen haseder hazeh, that this rule of midah tova meruba is not being kept. Ki b'dvar haTorah, when it comes to the Torah, b'yeudei haTova, in the promises of the Torah, hi mikatzeres fa'oila b'hem. It's very short, ma'at ma'at. In other words, when it comes to the reward, v'nasati gishmeichem be'itam, it's very bekitzer, it's very concise, it's very condensed. When it comes to punishment, ma'aricha kiflayim v'kivli kiflayim, the Torah speaks at great length. B'kama mine yisurim kashim iminim shainim, with all kinds of harsh punishments. What's the reason? Look at number 13. Hashlishis is like this. Kimidarach hakasani is a darach of someone who gets angry. Asher yimad behagzamois. If you're really angry at somebody, you don't say anything that's going to happen to them. You keep your mouth closed and you cut off their head. If you're really angry at somebody, you don't say, oh boy, you're going to get it. You know what you do? You say nothing. And then you destroy. That's someone who's really angry. Zehu shomer hamistama b'libai. If you're really angry, you can't even talk. This way you don't expend any of the anger. Whatever you set out to do, you do with great force. But you see somebody who's speaking and screaming and getting angry. His anger will be expended in all of his exaggerated terms. That person only will be able to do something with his mouth. And then like we see Avshalom. When Avshalom had sinna against Amram, what does it say? It says about Avshalom, he couldn't speak to him not good and not bad. Why? Because he wanted to really give it to him. He's not going to waste any energy talking. By the way, it says the Bino Itim, this is what we find in Megillas Esther. He was so angry, he didn't say anything. He didn't waste any energy. It was just brewing up inside of him, and that's the worst type of anger. And therefore, this is the concept that the Bino Itim says. I'll look in the end of number 15. Al Kain bi'avas Hashem li Yisrael, in the great love that Hashem has with Klal Yisrael. All the Teichecha is really Midah Tova Meruba. Midah Tova Meruba, yeah. You see the great Ava of Hashem, that Hashem is, so to speak, allowing His anger to be expended b'divrei haTorah instead of b'maisa. Therefore, it was because of Hashem's great love for Klal Yisrael. Hirba ma'oid b'divrei teichachas u'mos, He gave us so much rebuke. B'chama minei tzaros v'rois, with all kinds of punishment. L'man b'riboy advarim ha'ela, with all of these many words, yeshachei chamasai, His anger will subside, v'layetzu l'payel, and will not go out into effect. So coming back, look at number 9. Coming back in number 9. So the Bino Litim says an awesome thing, an amazing thing. Remember, we asked, why does it have to say in Tehillim, Loichein harashayim? Why would anybody think the Rishon would get reward? Right? It says, what's the reward of the tzaddik? Whatever he does will be successful. And the pasuk says, Loichein harashayim. Why would you think a Rasha would get Hatzlacha? Says Bino Itim Ga'onos. After talking about the great reward for the tzaddik, you might think, and a Rasha, his punishment is on the same ratio, is on the same plane, is on the same level. In other words, if the tzaddik is getting so much success, then you would think the Rasha is going to get so much punishment. No! The ratio of the punishment of the Rasha is not the same. The Rasha will get his punishment, but he'll just be It's not that you would think the Rasha gets reward. It's you would think, if you see the great success of the tzaddik, you would think the Rasha gets a commensurate, proportional punishment. No! The Risham do not get a commensurate, proportional punishment. Says V'nelitim, number 9. Look at number 9. Achirtza ki leish hatzadik hiflik besipur riboy Mine ha'isha yilai. It speaks at length of his great reward. V'shapirya yitain be'itai. V'alehu lo yival. V'chal asher yasa yatzliach. Shekol zehu lo hidia. This is to teach Goydel v'riboy haschar v'ma'id ma'id, how great the reward is. Asher yagia le'ish zeh, that this man gets al tzidkois nafshay. So now, lest the person say, according to this erech and according to this schar, which is muflag, so too the oynesh of the Rishon will be bahaflaga, and the answer is no. Oynesh of the Rishon will be kal umuat. It will only be kamoitz hanidaf min haruach. This is not exaggerated, it's very understated. So Rabbi Isai, from here we learn the tremendous difference between midah toiva and midah sadin. That the schar, the midah of schar, the midah of reward, is 500 times greater than the midah of punishment. Therefore he says, if there's such disparity between the reward of tzaddikim and the punishment of Risham, that when it comes to tzaddikim it's to the nth degree, and when it comes to the punishment of Risham it's much smaller. So now we have a problem. Listen to this mamish go'inas. What's the end of the parak in Tehillim? You look at the end of the parak of Tehillim. First it talks about the greatness of the reward of the tzaddikim and the understated punishment of the Risham. How does the parak end? Al kain lo yakumu Risham ba'mishpat v'chatam ba'adas tzaddikim. Therefore the Risham do not get up in judgment, and the sinners in the council of the righteous. What was that talking about?
They don't want humans to judge them because humans would be much more severe.
What does it mean that the Rishonim are not being judged together with the Tzaddikim? What does that got to do with anything? Says the Bina Li'itim, now that the ratio of reward is so much different than the ratio of punishment, Hashem has to judge the Rishonim in a different court than he judges the Tzaddikim. Why? Because all the accusers and all the Makachigim will say, Ribbanisham, if you gave the reward to the Tzaddikim on such a great scale, then you need to punish the Rishon on the same scale, and they'll be Makatrig.
Why not? Why not punish them?
And be Makatrig.
For all the evil that they did. Why are you so lenient with them?
It's not lenient, it's that the midah of schar is much greater. They do get mishpat. So Hashem, in order...
is severe, plenty severe.
In order...
Proportionally, it's not the
That's
same.
what we have to say.
Yeah. But in order to, so to speak, cover up the disparity in judgment, the Yom has to conduct the judgment in different courts. In order to avoid the kitrug of the Mekatrigim, lo yakumu rishayim ba'mishpat ba'adas tzaddikim. Hashem has to separate it, in other words, so that the malachim who see the punishment of the rishayim do not see the reward of the tzaddikim. Otherwise, they're going to question that this is not a fair system. So he says very interestingly.
Wait a minute, but what about the judge? What court are the tzaddikim judged in when they do an avera? They're not in Russia.
Yeah, it's in the court of punishment. There's one court that determines reward, and one court that determines...
Tzaddikim and Rishon are judged in the same court of punishment?
Yeah. He says like this. He says, V'alkein, since there's so much disparity, he says, Lo yakumu harasham ha'chatam l'mishpat ba'adas ha'tzadikim ki yim yimtzu b'mishpat echad, if they're going to be found in the same mishpat. Elu etzel elu Yira davar zar b'kavadin hayasha. It's going to appear very foreign. And midas hadin will be mekatrig and say, why don't you make it an equal system? Therefore, in order to spare himself from that, he doesn't judge them together. Elu la'atzman ve'elu la'atzman. You'll ask, it's not fair. It's not a just system. You know what the answer is? We cannot fathom the depth of the matter. But only Hashem Himself knows derech tzadikim, what it is, and the derech rishaim. In other words, this is not something that we could comprehend, that we could fathom. That's why the parak ends. This is not a fair system. It's not an equal system. Therefore, the parak ends. No, Yoideya Hashem derech tzadikim. Only God knows what the righteous should get, and only God knows what the rishaim should get. Very interestingly. Well, Rabbi Glatstein, coming back to this week's Parsha. In order to understand this, we need to go for a moment to Parshas Kisavai. Take a look at number 16, some of the psukim in Parshas Kisavai. It says, if you will listen to the voice of Hashem, to keep the mitzvahs that I command you today, if you will listen, God will place you on top of all the nations of the world. And what will happen? All these blessings will happen, and you will attain them, because you listen to the voice of Hashem. Look carefully. What does the pasuk say? You will listen to the voice of Hashem your God to keep the mitzvahs that I command you today. What's the first reward? First reward is you will be made the greatest of all the nations. What about after that? All the brachos will come to you and catch up with you because you will listen to the voice of Hashem your God. Didn't it say that already? It said, Im shamaya tishma b'kol Hashem Elokecha. Why does it repeat again? Ki sishma b'kol Hashem Elokecha. Yeah? Everyone with me? I know it's been a very tiring summer. It's a hot summer. People get very tired at the end of the summer. But now we're in the month of September. And it's almost Elul. Rabbi say, why repeat 2 times? V'haya im shamaya tishma. And then again, Ki sishma b'kol Hashem Elokecha. That's what it says when it comes to reward. When it comes to punishment, it says, "V'haya im lo yisishma, uva'u alecha kol klal Yisrael." And it doesn't repeat im lo yisishma like it does by the reward ki sishma.
It also doesn't say shishma b'loshen kafel.
Yeah.
And brachos b'loshen kafel.
Well, ask the Bino Litim a bunch of questions. Now, when it comes to the brachos, it says "Uvo alecha kol habrachos elu yisigucha ki sishma." That's extra. Aside from the fact that it's extra, also it says first "Unesancha Hashem lekecha el yain," which is one of the greatest of the brachos. Why does it interrupt with "Unesancha Hashem lekecha el yain" and "Uvo alecha kol habrachos ha'ela v'hisigucha"? It should have said, before any bracha, uvo alecha kol haklalos, and then say unesancha Hashem lekecha el yain. Interesting. It says ki sishma. What does ki sishma mean? In the future. And by the klalos, it says in Parak Chavches Pasuk Memhei, uva'u ki lo shamata. You did not in the past. Here it says ki sishma in the future, and by the klalos it says ki lo shamata in the past.
But also says ki.
And by the brachos it says v'hisigucha. By the klalos it adds uradafucha. So, by Rabbi Sai, what I want to share with you is mamish, a major chiddush, a tremendous chiddush of the Bino Itim, something that I don't think most people are aware of. Another great illustration of how Midah Tova is meruba mimidas Paranios. Everybody knows, we said that Midah Tova is 500 times greater than Midas Paranios, but this is another dimension of how Midah Tova is much greater than Midas Paranios. This will answer the difference in the language between the brachas and the klalos in Re'eh. This will answer the difference between the brachas and the klalos in Kisavai. And this will answer why in Kisavai it says Ki Sishma in the future, and by the klalos it says Ki Lo Shamata in the past. And that is, the Bino Li'itim gives us a very beautiful mashal. And imagine a great person, a very generous person, a very giving person, and he sees a nice guy who's working for him. But unfortunately, this guy is a little bit of a lazy guy, and he's not really doing the job properly. But the generous boss wants to give this person money for the person to be able to bring home and support his family. So what does he do? After all, there's a rule, that if you're rented out to do a job, if you're a sachir, you only get paid when you finish the job. But this very magnanimous boss would like to be able to already start supporting him. So he says like this. He says, I know you're a good worker. I know you do a good job. Here's the year's salary. I'm giving it to you now. Just do your job, and you do your job, you've earned it. In other words, once you do the job, then it comes out lemafreya that what I gave you is something you deserve. But a magnanimous boss will basically advance the money. Even though the person didn't do the work yet, and he's not moichel the work. He's not saying you don't have to work for me. You do have to work for me. But I'm giving it to you now, provided that you do your job.
Magnanimous, but he's not too smart.
So, what does he do? He gives it. He says, I have a big job for you. And like this.
It should be a meritocracy.
Hashem is giving me another year.
Here's the money. You use it for whatever you need. And I trust that you're going to do the job. And whatever you don't do, whatever I owe you, I'll give you in the end.
And you don't do the job?
Whatever I give you, you owe me in the end. In other words, Tase es malachti, v'tinaka meshnasati loch, you'll deduct this from your salary, and this way I'll pay you the rest when you're done. Says the Bino Leitim, this is what the Rebbeinu Shalom does to a yid.
Yeah, sure.
The schar that a person gets in life and the success a person has, we often like to think, oh, I'm such a big tzaddik. So Rebbeinu Shalom is, with all my money and all my success and all my happiness, is a reward for all the great mitzvahs that I've done. Lav davka. Very often, a lot of the success that a person has and the happiness and the good fortune is advance payment for mitzvahs that Rebbeinu Shalom is hoping we will do. And the Rebbeinu Shalom says, provided that you do it. You'll keep it provided that you do it. You can have it now provided that you do it. This is what it means. In this week's Parsha, es habracha. Here it is. Not if you listen to me. Es habracha. Here it is. I'm giving you the reward.
That's why you use Asher.
Asher. Asher tishmu. You're going to listen to me. I know you're going to listen to me. Here it is. Es habracha. Asher tishmu. The haklala. Rebbeinu Shalom never punishes in advance. The haklala is im loy sishmo. If you don't listen, no, then I'm gonna punish you. But there's a fundamental difference between reward and punishment. Reward is often advanced, provided that asher tishmo, I know you're gonna do the right thing. How often we give our kids something? I'm giving this to you. I know you're gonna do the right. I know you're gonna earn it. But klala doesn't work that way. Klala, it's a full-fledged stipulation. Im loy tishma'u. Fu amrei es habracha ani noisin lachem afa pi she'adayin lo yasi sama mitzvos. Ela ani maniach b'munach kayam. I have a premise. Asher tishmo. You're going to do it. And you're going to be zoicha to it. And then you'll receive the rest of it. I'll save a little bit. I will reward you. I'm not giving you everything. But you'll get the rest later. But by the klala, there is no kedima. There is no advanced punishment. I'm not assuming you're going to violate it. Chalila, I have faith in you. I have trust in you. If you do not fulfill the mitzvahs, then it will be v'haklala. Now in Parshas Kisavai, says Abino Itim, the Rebbeinu Shalom explains even further. Amnam Kan, in the Parsha of Kisavai, it explains better. V'haya im shamayat tishma unesancha Hashem. Meaning, if you come to do what you need to do completely, that you listen to Hashem in the Shmiras HaMitzvahs. In other words, Parshas Re'eh already said, I'm giving you Es HaBracha, and I'm confident you'll do the right thing. And when you do the right thing, then you'll get the rest. Now you should know, Sheshamaya Tishma B'Kal Hashem B'Shmiras Mitzvahsav. I'm not explaining in detail any reward for what you did. I'm telling you generally, you will have great reward. In other words, to the point, if you would put on one side of the scale all the success of all the nations together, who ever lived, and your success, yours will be much greater. There's no way to evaluate your reward. Therefore, I'm not explaining them in detail. That's what it means in Parshas Kisavai. V'haya im shamaya tishma Hashem lekecha. You know what it will be? It will be really good. What I have to tell you is as follows. that I'll be mefaret, and you'll get it immediately without any delay. And this is like a guarantee that this will be like a down payment for kisishma b'kol Hashem alekacha. For what? For my premise that you are eventually going to listen to the mitzvahs. In other words, lefikach ani moine ata elu hapratim hanesunim lecha kaidem asiyah. I'm going to enumerate the details that are given to you before you do it, because after the Maisa, I will bring you what I said. That has no gavul. But regarding the Teichacha, it will not be that way. Nothing bad will come to you easily. In other words, like this. In Parshas Kisavai, Hashem says, I already told you that I have faith in you, you're going to do the right thing, and you're going to get reward. You want to know what will the full reward be when you actually do it? It's so great I can't even tell you. It's so much greater than the Goyim. You're going to be much greater than the Goyim. Whatever the Goyim get, you're on a completely different scale. But one thing I tell you now is, even before you do it, you will get all the brachos. Why? Not because you've already done it, because in the future, ki sishma b'kol Hashem alekacha. I have faith, you will listen to me. But when it comes to the teichacha, nothing will happen easily. When will they come? Ridafucha. First it will pursue you. Like somebody running after a person who's running away, to see maybe you'll be able to escape from it. That's why it says ridafucha. But if you eventually violate all of these averos, then you know why you'll be punished? Not kiloi yishma, not because you won't listen in the future. No, I will not visit any punishment on you until you've already violated al kiloi shamata, only for you not fulfilling it in the past. Well, says Abino Litim, we can now revisit the first parak of Tehillim. And that is, we've already explained beautifully in the first parak of Tehillim, when it says loichein harisham, it doesn't mean the risham won't get rewarded. It means the risham don't have the same scale of punishment as there is for reward. That's why it says like this. Ashrei hoyesh. Ashrei means fortunate, with all forms of good fortune, without any limitations.
What are you?
I'm in the last part, in number 4. The Kama, now it comes out very beautiful. Another dimension of understanding the first parak of Tehillim. On the 4th line in the last paragraph of number 18. L'hoyrois haflaga b'lish shum pratiyos, avalami shaloi ba'adayin l'chlal payel. But to someone who had not yet done the mitzvahs, ki b'saras Hashem cheftzoi, like this. The first parak of Tehillim is not talking about a tzaddik who did the mitzvah yet. It's talking about a tzaddik who wants to do the mitzvah. It says, Ki Mitzvahs Hashem cheftzoi. It's his desire to do it. He didn't do it yet. Uvesayrasoi yege. He will do it. Says Rebbeinu Shalom, good. You're the kind of guy who will do the Torah, will learn the Torah. Don't think you're going to have to actually learn it to receive the reward. The al tachshav ki kiman shekvar kibo kolzeh imkain kishachar yasa poyel. So we're talking about someone who only has the chefetz, he didn't actually do it, and Hashem is giving him reward. That what? Hashem is advancing him the reward. So, but we have one problem now. If the tzaddik who wants to do Torah mitzvahs is advanced the reward,
what's his reward?
So what's he going to get once he does it? It's almost like, a little anticlimactic, After he does it, and now what? Says Rebbeinu Shalom, no. Don't think that after he actually does it, then when he does it, he has nothing left. No. Kol asher yaseh, when he will do it, yatzliach, he'll get even more reward. But the Rishayim, no, it's not the case. Loikein HaRishayim doesn't just mean that their punishment is on a different scale. It means more than that. Not so the Rishayim. The Rishayim don't get any advanced punishment. Nothing is advanced. They don't receive anything l'kabel shum chilek oynesh koydem poil hara, but rather kiyim kamois asher tifena ruach. They'll be like the chaff that the wind moves, and wind only moves the chaff once it's chaff. So too the Rishonim are only punished once the Rishonim, but not before the Rishonim. What?
But for tzaddikim, he doesn't look for reward. The reward to get close to Kodesh Baruch Hu, to sell the reward, he can do Hashem's will. That's the biggest reward.
That's for the tzaddikim. But Lamaisa on Hashem's account, it's not so. Hashem's account, He does give them reward. He advances them reward, and He rewards them after the fact. Okay, so Rabbi says, so what we're learning from the Bina Leitim is a very important principle. And that is, when we say there's a rule of Midah Tova, Meruba Midas Peranios, it's qualitatively, it's quantitatively, it's 500 times more in terms of generations, and in terms of the quality, fundamentally, I think this is a very big chiddush. I don't think this is something that we're familiar with, that when it comes to reward, once somebody sets out to do the right thing, the Rebbe Shalom advances them reward, and then when you do it, the Rebbe Shalom gives even more. As opposed to Rishon, the Rebbe Shalom does not advance punishment until it actually happens. Well, comes the Baal HaTurim. This is something we've seen in the past. The Baal HaTurim points out that when it comes to the reward, it says Es HaBracha. But when it comes to the punishment, it says V'Haklala. And we all know that the word Es is Ba L'Rabbis, which comes to teach that when it comes to bracha, there's always more bracha than there is klala. Es is Ba L'Rabbis. When it comes to blessing, when it comes to success, the Rebbe Shalom always gives more than he gives klala. And Rabbi said this is a concept that the Rambam writes, and that is, even though most people like to walk around life moping and groping of how bad things is, says the Rambam, it's not true. Most things in life are good. The Rambam says a klal, there is more goodness in life than there is bad. Look, nobody gets away scot-free. Not everything in life is perfect. And there are times of difficulty. But in general, in everybody's life, there are more good things than bad things. And a person should be aware of that and recognize that and have gratitude to Rebbe Shalom for that, for all the goodness that Rebbe Shalom bestows upon us. And Rabbi Sai, this is something we see in the Shiva de Nechemta as well, in the 7 weeks of consolation. Because there are only 3 weeks of punishment. But we have much more consolation and much more nechama, and this is an attitude to try to learn in life to appreciate the Midah Tova of the Rebbe Shalom. Shkoyach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.